I nearly spilled my wine when I saw him across the crowded gallery. Jace, my high school sweetheart who had disappeared without a trace 15 years ago. Our eyes locked and memories came flooding back. The dizzy excitement of young love, late nights full of laughter, promises of forever. Then the gut-wrenching confusion when he vanished unexpectedly. I watched Jace weave through the crowd toward me, still trim and handsome as ever, though time had etched faint lines at the corners of those piercing green eyes. "Marla," he said, "I can't believe it's you." His voice sent shivers down my spine. "You look incredible." I murmured awkward pleasantries, stunned by this ghost from my past. What was Jace doing back in Colorado Springs after all this time? I noticed no wedding ring on his finger and couldn't help but wonder if he was still the charming heartbreaker who had left me pining all those years ago. "What brings you here?" I managed. "My job. I'm a web designer now, freelance. Just got hired for a project here in town." He seemed nervous. I studied his face, searching for a clue to whether he had thought of me at all during our 15 years apart. Jace suggested grabbing dinner to catch up. I hesitated at first, but curiosity got the better of me. Over candlelit pasta, wine flowing freely, the conversation turned intensely personal. Jace revealed he had burned out on big city life in Chicago, tired of the rat race and shallow connections. Now here he was, hoping for a fresh start someplace more peaceful. "Maybe this chance meeting is the universe telling me I need to set down roots," he said earnestly. "Reconnect with what really matters." When his hand found mine across the table, my pulse quickened. I thought of my small but comfortable house, my position as project manager in my family's firm, the quiet predictability of my life. Jace's return felt like a spark of electricity jolting me out of complacency. By the end of the evening, we had exchanged numbers with a promise to meet again soon. I barely slept that night, my mind spinning. When Jace called the very next day, I said yes immediately to another date, and another after that. His affectionate attention was intoxicating, exactly what I thought I had left behind in my teen years. He whispered sweet nothings in my ear and showered me with compliments. I felt desired, cherished. Before I knew it, we were officially a couple, seeing each other multiple times a week. My friends were skeptical when they heard Jace was back on the scene. "Isn't he the one who disappeared without explanation?" Cleo said pointedly. "Be careful, Marla." But I brushed off their warnings. When you find a connection like this, you have to see it through, I thought. What if Jace is my second chance at true love? Barely 3 months had passed, yet Jace dropped to one knee and presented me with a diamond ring. "Marla, you are the love of my life," he declared passionately. "I want to spend every day with you. Will you marry me?" My pulse roared in my ears. This was happening so fast, but when you know, right? I gazed at Jace's handsome face and eager eyes. He had lit a fire in my once predictable life. Maybe this whirlwind romance was exactly what I needed. "Yes!" I cried. "Yes, Jace, I'll marry you." He swept me up ecstatically in his arms. I clung to him, dizzied by emotions I hadn't felt since high school. My parents were skeptical when they heard the news. "Shouldn't you take things slow?" Mom asked. "Are you sure you really know this man after just a few months?" "I've never been more certain of anything," I insisted. Jace turned on the charm for them. "I know we rushed into this engagement," he admitted, "but from the moment I saw Marla again, I just knew. She makes me want to be a better man." Mom and Dad eventually acquiesced with tentative blessings. We couldn't afford some lavish wedding, so we opted for a small ceremony at the courthouse with our families and closest friends. I used up most of my savings account on a simple white dress and reception dinner afterwards. But Jace looked at me like I was the most beautiful woman in the world as we exchanged vows, pledging our lives to one another. That night, wrapped blissfully in my new husband's arms, I sighed, "I can't believe we're finally married." Jace nestled his face into my hair. "You've made me happier than I ever dreamed possible." As a wedding gift, Mom and Dad helped us buy a little 2-bedroom house in the suburbs. "Consider it an investment in your new life together," Dad said, admiration for Jace replacing his initial hesitations. My heart swelled gazing around our first home, picturing the family we would raise within these walls. Cleo came over the first week after our honeymoon, eager to see how I was settling in as a newlywed. "You look happier than ever," she remarked. "I hope Jace knows how lucky he is." I smiled radiantly. Oh, he tells me every day. My life felt richer and fuller by the month. As I rode this wave of marital bliss, the rapid pace of it all seemed irrelevant. I had everything I could want: the devoted husband, the cozy home, in-laws' approval. What more could a woman ask for? Doubts were a distant memory now. I had made the right choice marrying Jace. I just knew it. The first year of our marriage passed in a blissful blur, but as the honeymoon glow faded, I began noticing strange behaviors from Jace. He started disappearing for hours at a time, never telling me where he was going. Often he came home late reeking of alcohol, brushing off my worried questions. One night I awoke to find his side of the bed empty. The clock read 3:14 a.m. Sick with worry, I tried Jace's cell, but it went straight to voicemail. Where could he possibly be at this hour? At sunrise, he finally rolled in, clothes disheveled, clearly intoxicated. "Where have you been?" I demanded. "I was scared sick." He just shot me a sheepish grin. "Sorry, babe. The guys convinced me to grab some late-night drinks after work. I should have texted." I might have believed his flimsy excuse if it hadn't happened twice more that week. Jace claimed overtime or drinks with colleagues, but when I phoned his office to check, they insisted he had left at his normal time. One afternoon, I stumbled on receipts stuffed hastily in his pant pockets for a fancy necklace and resort hotel stay. Purchases we certainly couldn't afford on our household income. When I confronted Jace, he turned defensive. "You're snooping now? Unbelievable. It was a work trip. The necklace is for you. I can't have privacy?" He stormed off, leaving me standing there, receipt crumpled in my fist, feeling petty and ashamed. But I couldn't ignore the seed of doubt taking root inside me. The next time Jace disappeared, I drove to that resort and asked if a guest named Jace had checked in recently. "I'm afraid we can't disclose private guest information," the manager said. Before I could plead further, recognition flashed in her eyes. "Wait, I do remember him. Had drinks at our lounge bar with some blonde woman. Looked pretty friendly with her." The revelation knocked the wind out of me. When Jace came home that night, I unleashed on him. "Who is she, Jace? The truth." He had the audacity to look wounded. "What are you talking about? There's no one else, Marla. How could you accuse me of that?" "I followed one of your lies straight to that resort lounge," I retorted. "They told me everything." Jace paced angrily. "So now you're tracking my movements? Have you lost your mind?" He stormed towards the door. I refused to endure this constant interrogation in my own home. As the door slammed shut behind him, it finally sank in. The man I loved was not the man I had married. Where had things gone so horribly wrong? Things between Jace and I went from bad to worse after that explosive argument. He was hardly ever home anymore. Strange charges began appearing on our credit card bill, and I could no longer ignore his chemical odor late at night, the dilated pupils and agitated manner. My husband had entered the world of hard drugs. I confronted Jace as he stumbled through our front door, eyes bloodshot and his shirt rumpled. "Where have you been? Are you using?" He glared defiantly, so I blew off some steam with friends. "You gonna punish me for that, too?" "I saw the credit charges, Jace," I said. "Motel rooms, jewelry. This isn't just a little recreational fun. You're lying, doing God knows what with God knows who." My voice broke on the verge of hysterics. "This isn't the man I married." Jace seized my arms and shoved me against the wall. "You want to know what I do late at night?" he spat. "Sometimes I'd rather be with anyone than lie next to your judgmental accusations. Hell, a good hooker accepts my payment without demanding a play-by-play." I pushed him away, stunned by this vicious stranger in my home. "If you wanted out, you should have said so," I cried. "Not drag this family through your sordid double life." Jace's lip curled into a sneer. "Don't lecture me about family values, not when I bust my ass to provide for this one while you sit around policing my every move." His tirade cut me to the core. In desperation, I threatened divorce, but Jace just laughed coldly. "You'll take me back, just like you always do," he taunted. "Big, strong Marla, so tough yet so gullible." His expression hardened. "But cross me again, and you'll regret it." A chill ran down my spine at those words. That night, while Jace slept, I searched feverishly through his things. Buried deep, I uncovered baggies of white powder, seedy photos of Jace with strange women, thousands in ATM withdrawals. The cold truth stared back. This was no longer my husband, but a hostile imposter who had invaded our lives. In the dead of night, aware I was risking my safety, I began meticulously documenting Jace's more incriminating activities on my phone. A heated phone call with an unknown yelling over payments owed, powder residue on his work desk, unexplained furtive behavior in shadowy alleyways. As the evidence against Jace mounted, so did my agony over the man I had so foolishly entrusted my future to. Worse yet, now merely existing in the same house as Jace filled me with dread, never knowing when his hair-trigger temper might erupt again. Several weeks later, Cleo came over unexpectedly for our usual Saturday girls' brunch. As she chattered away, I mechanically pushed food around my plate, lost in thought, fingers probing the faded bruise on my upper arm hidden beneath a cardigan, a parting gift from Jace during our last scuffle. Cleo's eyes narrowed with concern. "Marla?" Gently she pulled my sweater sleeve back, revealing the ugly purple and yellow mark marring my skin. Her jaw dropped, comprehension dawning. Breaking down at last, I confessed everything. The lying, the cheating, now the fear of my own husband. Cleo enveloped me in her arms as I wept. "Pack your bags," she said firmly. "You're coming home with me." I sprung into action after that painful confrontation with Cleo, determined to shield myself from Jace's downward spiral. His threats still rang in my ears. Crossing him again would end badly for me. First, I stealthily withdrew over 10 grand from our dwindling savings to reopen my old personal checking account. If I made a run for it, I'd need quick access to funds. I stuffed essentials into bags stashed at Cleo's, ready to flee at a moment's notice. My next call was to an old college buddy who now worked in private investigation. I fed Conrad the names of seedy establishments Jace frequented and details of an assault charge during his Chicago days that Jace had conveniently omitted when we reconnected. "I'll run full background checks, dig deeper into recent activity," Conrad assured me. "We'll get clarity on who this guy really is." While anxiously awaiting Conrad's findings, I played the part of dutiful wife at home. Jace remained oblivious to my maneuvers as I continued logging evidence of his misdeeds. Most importantly, I kept close tabs on his packed schedule, noting when he slipped off for his illicit rendezvous. Late one evening, when Jace left for the office, I followed him at a distance to a rundown apartment complex and watched him disappear inside. Conrad's call came just as I witnessed a disheveled woman around Jace's age emerge looking dazed and hollow. Before she spotted me, I hit Conrad's number. "Got back deep records on your husband," he reported grimly. "Guy's in trouble. Mountains of gambling debt, suspected drug trafficking back in Chicago. He's dangerous, Marla." My blood turned to ice. So the man I had welcomed into my bed, my life, my family home, was a complete fraud, capable of God knows what ilk, if I exposed his lies. "There's more." Conrad's voice dropped. "Jace is wanted for assaulting his ex up north. Put her in the hospital with a concussion and 2 broken ribs when she tried leaving him." My knees buckled as Conrad described injuries mirroring my own concealed bruises. I realized then, Jace hadn't just duped me. He had methodically preyed upon my deepest longings to bind me helplessly to him before unleashing his demonic side. And I had danced straight into his trap. "He won't let me walk away easily," I whispered, comprehending my grave misjudgment too late. "Jace will seriously hurt me if he finds out what I know." "We'll make sure that doesn't happen," Conrad said. "I still have law enforcement contacts here. We'll get him arrested safely so you can get free." Wheels turning rapidly, I knew I needed allies for whatever endgame faced me, and Jace. Starting with my family's business, as office manager, I discreetly relocated precious client files and redirects company funds into protected accounts, shielding those assets from Jace's grasp. I strong-armed a bank associate into freezing the remaining savings under my name only. And I informed my family attorney on the sly about my situation, urging him to accelerate preparations for divorce. Finally, steeling myself before meeting Cleo later that week, I confessed my plan to set up Jace's downfall, regardless of the risk I faced. She squeezed my hand supportively. "I've got your back, girl, whatever happens next." The bait was set. I had arranged for an anonymous cash payment to be left at a discreet drop location after feeding Jace a fabricated work emergency. If all went according to plan, he would take the money and run, directly into our trap. My group of co-conspirators gathered at a rented office space near the drop point, reviewing our strategy. My family attorney briefed 2 plainclothes officers on Jace's history of assault. Cleo paced anxiously but nodded reassuringly when I caught her eye, and Conrad scanned area security feeds on a laptop, tracking Jace's movements. I peered over Conrad's shoulder as Jace's car appeared, pulling to the location described in the fake text I had shown him earlier. We held our breath, watching the grainy screen as Jace glanced around furtively before retrieving the parcel and speeding off. "He took the bait. Let's move," Conrad confirmed. We piled into 2 unmarked police vehicles, tailing Jace to a seedy motel on the outskirts of town. Undercover cameras captured him exiting his car, parcel tucked under one arm, looking smug as he entered a corner room. It was go time. I waited in the car, heart hammering, while the team stormed in. Even with the element of surprise on our side, the confrontation sounded ugly from my shelter around the corner. Crashing furniture, enraged yelling from Jace, cries of "Get your hands off me!" Then, silence. Moments later, Jace emerged in handcuffs, face mottled with rage as he realized my betrayal. "You set me up, you devious bitch," he roared, fighting against the restraints. "I'll kill you for this, Marla." I met his livid glare unflinchingly, let him spew threats. He was the one in chains now. As officers shoved Jace into the back of a squad car, grim satisfaction swelled within me. We had seized control from my tormentor at last. With the stolen cash and illegal substances found in Jace's possession, plus extensive documentation detailing his shady history, the police had enough evidence to hold him on felony charges. But the most damaging blow to Jace still awaited as part 2 of my plot unfolded. Hours after the motel sting, our town's elite gathered for a lavish business awards gala that I knew Jace planned to attend. Right on cue as the event kicked off, 2 uniformed officers marched through the glitzy ballroom entrance, eliciting audible gasps as they make a beeline for my table. My heart pounded with everyone's eyes upon me. "Marla Brooks, we need you to come with us," the taller officer stated while attendees gawked and murmured. "It's about your husband, ma'am." As instructed, I let out a strangled cry while the officers gently escorted me away. Before disappearing from sight, I glimpsed open-mouthed stares, my name echoing through the crowd. The spectacle was complete. No doubt word of Jace's shame would spread like wildfire. By dawn, his reputation in this town would be destroyed beyond repair. Alone in the ladies' room, I sagged against the wall as relief crashed over me. It was over. My nightmare at long last was finally over. I had reclaimed my life and my future. As tears spilled down my cheeks, an unexpected laugh escaped me. No more hiding, no more looking over my shoulder. I walked out into the night air reborn, unbound, the orange glow of streetlights welcoming me back to the world. In the weeks following Jace's dramatic arrest, I dove headfirst into legal proceedings, determined to nail his coffin shut. Restraining orders, divorce filings, lawsuits against Jace piled up on my attorney's desk as I sought financial and legal reparations. Most crucially, I provided police a full dossier documenting Jace's years of deception. The bruises concealed beneath layers of makeup, frantic texts sent furtively to friends whenever Jace lost his temper. My testimony was damning enough that prosecutors felt confident pursuing domestic assault charges alongside Jace's multiple drug and fraud offenses. When Jace appeared at his preliminary hearing, cocky as ever in an orange jumpsuit and shackles, his smug grin faded as formal charges were presented. His eyes burned with impotent fury when they landed on me sitting resolutely in the front row. The judge set harsh bail terms Jace had no means to meet. As guards dragged my soon-to-be ex back to his cell, his enraged screams echoed through the courtroom. "You'll pay for this, Marla! I promise you, you backstabbing whore!" His words no longer fazed me. They merely sealed his ultimate downfall. In the final divorce decree a month later, the judge took Jace to the cleaners. Due to irrefutable evidence of mental and physical abuse, I was granted our home, remaining household assets, and a hefty alimony settlement given my demonstrated resilience in the face of turmoil. "He deserves worse," Cleo fumed when reviewing the terms. "You went through hell thanks to Jace." I waved her off warily. It's enough knowing karma caught up with him. With multiple felony charges, he'll spend years in prison. That's revenge enough. Rumor mills churned in our small suburban circle about sordid details of Jace's collapsed house of cards. Drugs, cheating, physical assault. My divorce attorney arranged an exclusive tell-all interview for me with the local paper, cementing sympathy on my side. Portray her as the courageous hero who prevailed despite unimaginable betrayal and abuse behind closed doors, my counsel directed. She exposed a dangerous fraud and kept other women safe in the process. I confessed my whole gut-wrenching ordeal to the reporter, the subtle manipulation that seduced me, incremental violence excused away until it became intolerable, the elaborate sting operation that finally halted Jace's reign of terror. I ignored all the red flags because I so badly wanted to believe in second chances, I acknowledged. But some people cannot be saved. Now I advocate for stronger protections to prevent stories like mine. Public reaction to my published account was fiercely supportive. Well-wishers stopped me on the street, praising my bravery. Mothers with teenage daughters made me promise to visit their local high schools, so no other woman falls prey to toxic love like you did. Their faith in me to transform suffering into positive change moved me deeply. From my hometown to the halls of state legislature, I was living proof that even domestic violence victims could reclaim their strength. And redemption never tasted sweeter than the day State of Colorado versus Jace Eaton flashed across my phone screen, signifying the final death knell to my tormentor's devastation. Justice was served at last. With the smoke cleared from legal battles, I shifted focus to piecing my life back together. The house Jace and I had once shared became my solitary refuge, as I grieved the man I thought I married versus the monster revealed. Bitterness still arose occasionally over wasted years chained to Jace's deception. But anger no longer controlled me. Now purpose filled my days instead. Through counseling, I found wisdom and closure. My therapist inspired me to channel hardship into uplifting other women trapped in abusive cycles. Transform your testimony into empowerment, she urged. Let your story give hopeless victims the courage to break free. I began volunteering for a nonprofit domestic violence group, then joined their board to guide strategy. Within a year, I had spearheaded a broad outreach campaign called Rise Above that brought survivor stories into high schools and colleges. I shared my journey escaping Jace's grip to rapt audiences, refusing to gloss over uglier parts. See this scar under my eye? I would point out, a relic of Jace hurling a glass object. I once mistook rage for passion, but violence should never be normalized for the sake of love. My mission to advocate for at-risk women soon grew into a nonprofit venture I founded called New Dawn. We ran empowerment seminars, offered pro bono counseling and legal help, even temporarily housed women fleeing dangerous homes. 3 years later, New Dawn had expanded into 3 counties with a paid staff of 10 running daily operations. We opened new emergency shelters annually. I rubbed shoulders with state politicians and prominent activists as a respected leader in the field. One day, Cleo forwarded me a news article titled "Disgraced Businessman Sent Back to Jail," featuring Jace's scowling mugshot. I skimmed details of his failed parole attempt after serving time for drug charges tied to my case. A small flare of satisfaction rose in me knowing Florida penitentiaries would remain Jace's miserable dwelling. New Dawn got a shout-out in that story on Jace, Cleo added proudly. They credited your whole movement bringing light to domestic abuse issues locally. My eyes misted reading glowing praise for our collective impact. Perhaps my battered old soul still had some healing left to do. But staring at Jace's hardened criminal face, I felt only detachment, like gazing upon a stranger now. His power to haunt me had faded long ago. The chapter of my life defined by Jace's menacing presence had long since closed. In its place, a confident visionary and nurturer of broken spirits had emerged, one for whom peace and purpose now shaped days where uncertainty and fear once dwelled. Redemption manifests in many forms. Rarely does it arrive as we envisioned. But my second chance was never sweeter.
Take care of this, slave, John chuckled smugly, further insulting me as he tossed his dress suit my way. The suit struck me, causing water to spill. Ah, wipe it up, will you, and bring me another glass of water. Drunk as he was, or perhaps because of it, John's true feelings became apparent. In his eyes, I was nothing more than a slave. I threw the dress suit into the laundry bag with all my might, only to notice something sticking out of the suit pocket. Unfolding the crinkly, tightly folded paper, he had instructed me to take care of it, and so I intended to do just that. Beyond wondering why such a thing existed, I felt as if this was my ticket to freedom, an escape from all the irritation and dissatisfaction I experienced with John. I rushed out of the house and promptly submitted the divorce notice to the office. My name is Vanessa Owen, currently 50 years old with 2 children, Nicole, my firstborn, followed by my son Matt. From the beginning of my relationship with John, I never got along with his parents. Despite their disapproval, I loved John and believed we could be happy together. We eloped, defying my parents' objections, and started living in a small apartment. However, John was perpetually unhappy about our elopement-style marriage, nagging about leaving my parents for this marriage. There was a good reason for our rushed marriage. Nicole was already on her way. Despite John's knowledge of this, my parents opposed the marriage mainly because John never formally introduced himself. However, I don't intend to blame John entirely, acknowledging my faults. I've never liked his parents, who constantly criticized me. Right now, with a child on the way, we should focus on the future rather than dwelling on the past. Despite my admonishments, John continued berating me, saying things like I should never have married you, or your cooking is worse compared to my mother's. With no place to return after our elopement, I endured John's nagging every day. Despite everything, John adored our children, and our kids, Nicole and Matt, kept our marriage together through high school. When Jan was promoted to department head and brought colleagues home, including a male subordinate named Rob and a female subordinate named Jenna Manning, our marital relationship deteriorated. Though John had a good reputation outside the house and was highly trusted by colleagues, our family barely functioned. At one gathering, John's words revealed his true feelings, saying he could divorce me anytime, but I wouldn't let him go. This admission, disguised as a joke, made me realize the depth of his dissatisfaction. Despite his words, John's subordinates praised our supposed good relationship, while John laughed, intoxicated, insulting, and bragging until he passed out. His subordinates helped with the cleanup. As we cleaned up in a friendly atmosphere, Jenna spoke up, revealing that the director actually praised me at work. Unbelievable! I laughed, and Jenna chimed in, it's true. He always says his family gets along well. The president admires that too. The president values family in that regard. The director is always praising his family, so the president tells everyone else to learn from him. That kind of joke earlier only works if there's a good relationship, right? Gina, seeming a bit tipsy, happily chatted away about John's behavior at work. If that's true, that's good, I repeated, forcing a smile. I muttered under my breath, trust was long gone between us. I quickly realized that John was just saying those things to make himself look good. I've heard that good liars mix a bit of truth in their lies. Jan was probably deceiving his colleagues in the same way. I didn't know if it was his nature or a calculated move. But this made me truly despise Jan. I disliked how he shamelessly used the family as a facade. However, our children were still students, and I wanted them to go to college. As John said, think of the children. I couldn't divorce him. However, Jan had never brought up divorce either. We were just living life without making waves. In this life, our children grew up honest and cheerful. Nicole graduated from a local university and joined a nearby company. 3 years later, Matt, who had left home for university, also found a job locally and decided to return home. I was genuinely happy that the children were coming back, and when both became working adults, it felt like a weight was lifted off my shoulders. Then another happy event occurred. Mom, I'm thinking of getting married, Nicole, in her 3rd year of working, told me. Her partner was a senior at her company, Chris Adams, a fine young man who had spent his childhood overseas. He seemed very intelligent. John was happy about the marriage too, and Nicole quickly started preparing for it. The wedding was to be a casual garden wedding. Usually, I'd wear a formal dress, and Jan would wear a morning suit. Still, guests were told to dress casually, so it was decided that I would wear a simple dress. and John would be fine in his existing suit. Despite everything, I wanted to honor Nichols' special day, so I carefully chose a dress. I thought about getting a new suit for Jan, but he insisted that the one he already had was fine. Reluctantly, I brushed and mended John's suit, looking forward to the wedding. On the wedding day, blessed with good weather, the ceremony began, surrounded by beautiful greenery and flowers. Rob and Gina, John's colleagues who had always been kind to Nicole and Matt, attended the wedding, and I thanked them for coming. At the reception, a stand-up party, I spent a happy time greeting Nichols' friends and colleagues. Jan seemed to be enjoying himself, but perhaps getting too drunk, he started commanding, "Hey, Vanessa, get me a drink." Waiters were walking around the venue, and it was embarrassing that he had to call out to me, who was far away, instead of just looking around. "Mrs. Owen, I'll go for you." Rob and Gina supported me, entertaining John, especially Gina, who stayed by John's side like a wife. I felt uneasy about it but was busy greeting other guests, so I left John to them. It was a beautiful ceremony, and the wedding ended successfully. Gina took care of a heavily drunk Jan until the end when the taxi arrived. She said, "John, your taxi is here," and helped him into the car. I also got into the taxi and spoke to her. "Thank you, Gina. Take care." "No, thank you. Looks like it's going to be a long night. Take care." I took her words as a reference to the drunk John and laughed. However, her gaze was not on John but me. I felt strange again, but I said goodbye and returned home with Jan. Nicole and Matt went to the after-party. Leaving just the two of us in the taxi, Jan seemed a bit more cheerful after a nap. When we got home, he walked in on his own. Usually, we didn't talk much, but Jan, more drunk than usual, couldn't stop talking. Finally, the kids are off our hands. I was worried about Nichols turning out like you, but I'm glad she got married. He belittled me as usual. John lay on the sofa. "Vanessa, water," and then he arrogantly ordered me around. I sighed inwardly and went to get in water. "Here's your water. Take off the suit if you're going to sleep. It'll get wrinkled." I said that and put the water on the table. John, getting up, said as he undressed, "You're really useful. You do everything. I can't believe you'd speak that way, even if you're drunk. Hey, slave, take care of this." John chuckled smugly, throwing his dress suit at me. The suit hit me, causing water to spill. "Ah, wipe it up, will you, and bring me another glass of water." Whether drunk or not, it must be his true feelings. John thought of me as a slave. I was initially angry, but the anger didn't last long. Seeing Jian snoring loudly in front of me, I surprisingly felt nothing. I realized that I had become indifferent to Jian, lacking even hatred or love. After picking up the suit that John had carelessly thrown aside, I noticed his trousers had also been discarded. Feeling irritated again, I stood before the bag for dry cleaning, angrily throwing the suit into the bag with all my strength. That's when I noticed something sticking out of the suit's pocket. "What?" I muttered to myself, surprised, and pulled it out. It was a piece of paper, crisply folded. As I unfolded it, I had to cover my mouth in shock. At that moment, I remembered Gina's words about the night being long, so that's what she meant. Realizing this, a smile involuntarily formed on my lips. He said to take care of it, so I should, right? I could hear the excitement in my voice. The piece of paper in front of me, which had come out of John's suit pocket, was a divorce notice already filled out by Jan. Yeah, that must be it. He meant for me to submit it, so I will. More than wondering why it was there, I felt like it was my ticket to freedom. It seemed like an escape from all my irritation and dissatisfaction with John. It was still 8:00 p.m., and the dry cleaners were still open. I grabbed the dry cleaning and the divorce notice, rushing out of the house. After dropping off the suit at the cleaners, I headed straight to the government office. "Please take this." I went to the 24-hour service desk and, with a smile, handed over the hastily completed divorce notice. Then I hurriedly packed my things, taking only what I needed. I left the house with John still snoring loudly. For the time being, I decided to stay at a hotel, soaking in a large bath and sleeping in a comfortable bed until morning. However, the next morning, my phone had several missed calls, all from John. It surprised me that my number was still in John's phone. Yes, where are you? Just as I was thinking about it, another call came in. Reluctantly, I answered, and John's panicked voice came through. He must have been surprised to wake up and find me gone. After all, the spilled water is still there, a clear sign of something amiss. Where are you? Just as I was about to respond, John continued, We came home together, didn't we? The water is still spilled, and your clothes are gone. What's going on? From his words, it was clear he didn't remember what he had said the previous day. I sighed and said, You told me to send the suit to the cleaners, right? Well, there was a completed divorce notice in it. I thought that meant I should submit it, so I did. John erupted on the other end of the phone, yelling, What? How dare you do something so reckless? Do you realize what you've done? I was surprised by his reaction, but no matter how angry John got on the phone, it didn't bother me. You're so loud this early in the morning. I'm about to have breakfast at the buffet. Bye. Probably there was nothing to eat at home since I'd always prepared breakfast every morning. There was neither bread nor cereal stocked up. Nickel was likely at the hotel given as a wedding gift, and Matt wouldn't wake up until afternoon, having probably stayed out late drinking. John must be panicking alone in a house without food. With that thought, I savored my delicious breakfast. After breakfast, I immediately went to look for an apartment at a real estate agency. I didn't have the luxury of choice. I urgently needed to find a new place to live, but thankfully, I stumbled upon an apartment just a few blocks down from Nickel's new place. Moreover, the real estate agency was hiring part-time staff. I found both a home and a job that day and felt immensely grateful to the company. On my way back to the hotel, I received a call from Matt. Mom, where are you? Dad's making a fuss. I had been ignoring calls from John, so he must have forced Matt to call me. Matt's voice still sounded sleepy. I've divorced your father. I'm leaving the house, so take care. What? What do you mean? Matt sounded surprised by my words. Anyway, I needed to explain everything properly to my children. I decided to call Nickel that day and explain everything at the house. Why'd you suddenly call me here? Nickel looked anxious, understandably so. Yesterday was the peak of happiness, but today she was called to the house for something serious. She must have known it wasn't just a casual conversation. I felt sorry for her, but my parenting days were over. Being a parent is forever, but I want to live as a person, not as anyone's slave. I shouldn't feel ashamed for this. Even though I thought this, I couldn't shake off the guilt towards my children. A sudden divorce? What do you mean divorce? Both of them questioned me simultaneously, and even John, taking advantage of the situation, joined in. That can't be true, right? Convince her. Despite being the root cause of the issue, John played the victim. It was turning into a 3-against-1 situation. I wanted the children to understand that this divorce wasn't just my whim. All I did was submit the divorce papers that your father had already filled out. Why am I being treated like the villain when it was your father who had prepared them in the first place? Hearing this, Nicole and Matt turned their gazes to John. Caught off guard, John frantically searched for an excuse. A villain. Come on, that was just a joke, right? Who would actually submit that? A joke. Do you have any idea how much that joke has worn me down? Jen flinched at my loud voice. Nickel and Matt clammed up, exchanging looks. Besides, for a joke, it was too well prepared. Don't you think? To me, it looked like something prepared to convince someone. John turned red and argued back, spitting out his words. His panicked state made the children realize something was amiss. I couldn't help but burst into laughter at John's behavior. No need to get so worked up. It's like you're admitting it's true. You set me up. You're the one who got angry at my deduction. Listening to our conversation, Nickel cautiously asked a question. What do you mean? I decided it was time to tell them everything. Well, you're not children anymore, so I have to tell you. Your father and Gina are having an affair. What are you talking about? John turned pale and stood up. Nicole and Matt looked shocked at first, but then directed looks of contempt at John. I found it strange. She used to call him director, but recently it's been John, and her words about our happy family felt insincere. That can't be. While she said she'd invite us, it felt like she was mocking us. A woman's intuition is often right. John was sweating unnaturally, unable to make any excuses. His behavior only confirmed my suspicions. While it was a shock, it was more about betrayal than lost love, which allowed me to keep my composure. But what really kept me sane was my role as a mother. To think she was invited to the wedding. "I'm sorry, Mom," Nicole started crying. Jan looked hurt by her words, but he had no right to feel hurt, and Nicole shouldn't feel responsible. "I only became sure of it yesterday. It's not your fault, Nicole," I comforted Nicole. As I said this, Matt sighed deeply, giving John a sharp look. I knew Mom and Dad weren't close, but this is too much. John's voice trembled pitifully. I had no choice. She kept pressuring me for a divorce, and I had to invite her to Nicole's wedding to convince her. "Even the divorce papers, you used me. Otherwise," she said, "she'd tell the president about the affair." Anger made my fists tremble. After our force, she wanted to become John's next wife and take my place as Nicole's mother. So she had to attend the wedding. That's why he reluctantly invited her, planning to initiate the divorce afterward, showing her the completed divorce notice as proof. "I never intended to really divorce you, it's true." "Sure, you never intended to let go of your slave, did you?" "What are you saying? I never thought of you that way," John desperately pleaded, but Matt interjected. "But Dad, you always said it would be easy to marry a woman who obeyed everything like Mom does." "What?" "You always belittled Mom but never divorced her because you thought it was convenient for you." I stood up. "Is there any reason I should stay married to this man?" Nicole and Matt shook their heads firmly. "Mom, you deserve to be free." "That's right. And you'll always be our mom, even if Dad becomes a stranger." Nicole wiped her tears and smiled through her sniffles. After that, we left the house. Matt, not wanting to stay with John, decided to move into my apartment. The divorce papers were already submitted. We still had to sort out the property division, but I was relieved to distance myself from John. A month later, one of John's subordinates, Rob, visited the real estate agency. "When I started working here, huh? Aren't you Director Owen's wife, Rob? Thank you for coming to Nicole's wedding the other day. What brings you here today?" "Actually, I broke up with my girlfriend and thought about a fresh start. Maybe moving to a new house." Rob smiled awkwardly as he sat down in front of me. "Oh, I see." I had heard about Rob's girlfriend a few times. He seemed to care for her deeply, but it must not have worked out. Wanting to cheer him up, I responded with a smile. "We found a suitable place, but since it was lunchtime and the person in charge of viewings was out, we scheduled a viewing for another day. By the way, when did you start working here?" Director didn't mention anything about it. "No, really, we got divorced." "What?" "But last week at the dinner with the president, John was talking about planning a family trip." Rob was shocked, and so was I. John was still spreading such nonsense. He would undoubtedly continue using the family to get closer to the president if I stayed silent. I decided to tell Rob the whole story. "John and Gina. That's unbelievable." Rob turned pale. His reaction was oddly striking. He slowly opened his mouth. "My girlfriend was Gina Manning." I gasped, not expecting that Rob and Gina had been dating. Rob muttered, "I can't forgive them." I silently watched him. "Mrs. Owen, I can't forgive the two of them. I'll inform the president." His determined gaze met my nod of agreement. I felt the same way. I refused to be manipulated by John any longer. Rob left the shop, saying he'd come back for the viewing another time. He had my contact information from Nicole's wedding. I was sure he would contact me eventually. That day after work, as I was heading home, Rob contacted me immediately. "Mrs. Owen," I told the president. His voice was much more energetic than the time we met, made me smile. The president was furious. betraying his family and having an affair with a subordinate. Both of them will be dealt with. Really? That's great. Now we won't be used by them anymore. Those two deceived everyone, the family, the staff, even the president. They were called into the president's office right after I left. Imagining the scene, I couldn't help but smile. Even though they were no longer a part of my life, I couldn't accept them getting away scot-free. Thank you, Rob. You will surely find happiness. I sent this to Rob, feeling like it was something I also wanted to hear. Eventually, Jan and Dina's affairs spread throughout the company, especially John, who had always boasted about his happy family life, turned out to be a scoundrel who preyed on a subordinate. He was demoted 3 ranks from director to an ordinary employee. At home, he had no family waiting for him. For a man over 50, it would be interesting to see how he would live from now on. Gina resigned, probably due to the scrutiny. She was about 35 years old, a pitiful woman unemployed in her mid-30s after meddling with a married man. Their relationship also ended. Such an unhealthy affair was never going to last. Gina had pleaded with Rob, but he firmly rejected her. Feeling relieved, his reaction made me feel relieved too. Afterward, I continued to live peacefully with Matt in our apartment. 2 years later, Matt told me he was getting married. Just when I thought I'd be alone, he said, "Mom, let's live together now. I'm looking forward to the birth of my grandchild." Living with Matt and his wife, Nicole, is also doing well as a mother of one. The fact our family keeps growing brings me joy. I reached out to my elderly parents whom I hadn't spoken to in a while, told them about the divorce. They said, "Bring the kids over sometime." And I felt endlessly sorry and grateful to them. I plan to make up for my past mistakes by being filial to my parents and continue to be a reliable mother, always there to help my children. Covered in blood, my high school freshman daughter, Becky, who was supposed to have gone to my husband's family home with him, returned home bleeding from her forehead. I screamed in shock, and after hastily treating her wounds, I immediately contacted my husband, Ryan. When he answered the phone, I couldn't help but yell at him, "Ryan, where are you? I told you I'm on a business trip, didn't I?" I was stunned by his unexpected reply. A while ago, I had seen him off with Becky 5 days earlier, heading to his family home. Before me stood my daughter, seriously injured. Seeing my confusion, Vicky told me a shocking truth. "My name is Kathy Hansen, a 40-year-old part-time housewife. My husband, Ryan, the same age as me, is a salesman who visits various schools to sell high school teaching materials. He always says trust is important, looking so cool being diligent and proper." Maggie became a high school freshman this spring. Once a clingy child who couldn't leave my side, she's now so responsible that she cooks dinner while waiting for me to return from my part-time job. Life was peaceful with my husband and daughter, but 5 years ago, my mother became bedridden due to an internal illness. Since then, I've been busy juggling caregiving and my part-time job, unable to manage a visit to my in-laws except during the Christmas holidays. During such times, Ryan was safe, jokingly saying, "Don't overdo it. Aren't you lucky to have an understanding husband?" He would go to visit his family home alone, and though I felt terrible, I was grateful as I was overwhelmed with caring for my mother. 3 years ago, my mother-in-law passed away suddenly in an accident. My father-in-law, who was very close to her, became deeply depressed, and Ryan's visits to his family home became more frequent. Moreover, Ryan expressed his desire to take his dad on a trip to cheer him up and treat him to delicious meals with each visit. The expenses increased $300 to $500, but I couldn't complain about money as I hadn't been able to visit my in-laws myself. One day, Ryan mentioned the cost of his next visit. "I need $11,000 for my next trip home," he said. I doubted if such a large sum was really necessary for visiting back home, but he never explained the details of the expenses. It must be necessary, I thought, as a way of showing how thankful I am to my father-in-law. I convinced myself of this. However, due to the sudden expense, I had no choice but to temporarily withdraw money from the savings account I had set aside for Becky's school fees. I'll have to skip going to the beauty salon for a while and make sure not to dip into Becky's money again, I decided, beginning to save diligently and gradually returning money to Becky's account. As Becky's exams finally ended and things settled down, my father-in-law said, "I want to see my granddaughter again." "All right, I'll take Becky and Dad to eat seafood as a reward for their hard work." "Really?" "Yay." Seeing Becky's beaming smile, I stroked her head, saying, "Thank you for always being so patient." She never complained, even though she always had to endure and even helped with caring for my mother. I was filled with gratitude. Then, on the morning of their departure to visit my father-in-law, Becky said, "I'll buy some souvenirs and come back." I replied, "Have fun," and we were all smiling. Little did we know what was about to happen. 5 days after Ryan and Becky left for my in-laws, around noon, I was preparing lunch in the kitchen when I heard the front door rattle open. "Who is it?" I shouted, entering without ringing the doorbell. I was startled and headed to the entrance, only to find Becky standing there, bleeding from her forehead. What on earth happened? I let out a scream, almost in a shriek, desperately looking around for Ryan, but he was nowhere to be seen. Trembling, my eyes brought Becky inside, and I immediately called out to Ryan, "Ryan, where are you?" "I'm at work. Didn't I tell you that I left for a business trip the day after taking Becky to my parents' home?" I was confused, having heard nothing of this work, and more importantly, Becky had come home seriously injured. Ryan hung up quickly after saying, "She probably just fell. Don't take it too seriously. Girls her age tend to exaggerate." I couldn't possibly accept such a nonsensical story. While attending to Becky, I asked her, "Why are you injured? And did Dad leave for work?" Vicky, her face pale, kept her trembling lips sealed for a while. Then she whispered, "Dad." He pushed me. Shocked, I gently rubbed Becky's back as I listened to her story. An unbelievable truth was exposed. Ryan had been keeping secrets from us, and he had injured Becky when she discovered them. That's not all. He threatened her while she was bleeding, saying, "If you tell anyone about this, next time it won't just be an injury." Vicky had managed to escape from my in-laws' house when Ryan hesitated, and my father-in-law returned home. Fortunately, she had some money with her and was able to take the bus back home. How anxious she must have been, hiding her injury all the way here. I vowed never to forgive anyone who hurts my sweet Becky. I was angry not only at Ryan for abusing Becky, but also at the secrets he had kept. After hearing everything from Becky, I was about to call my father-in-law, ready for revenge. I was shocked to see numerous missed calls from him on my phone. "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't notice the phone while I was cooking." I apologized. "No, it's fine." More importantly, I heard Becky had to rush back due to some urgent matter. "Did she arrive safely at your place?" "That's what I've been worried about, and why I called so many times," my father-in-law inquired. Hearing his words left me speechless. My husband, Ryan, had fabricated such a lie to cover up the fact that our daughter, whom he had injured, had fled back to our home. I then spilled everything to my father-in-law, who was oblivious to it all. "Becky is fine. I'm taking her to the hospital, but I can't forgive Ryan. Can you keep him at your house a bit longer?" "I want to give him a piece of my mind," I requested. My father-in-law immediately agreed, promising his cooperation. He said he would cunningly persuade Ryan to stay at their home for a while longer. In the meantime, I ran around making preparations for a confrontation with my husband. 5 days later, after completing the investigation into Ryan's secrets, I was on my way to my in-laws' house. Just as I was about to ring the doorbell, I saw Becky running up to me, out of breath. "Mom, wait for me. Didn't I tell you to wait at home? I can't just sit around. I have to confront him about what he did to me." I had planned to go into my in-laws' house alone, not wanting Becky to witness the argument between my husband and me. But it seemed Becky didn't want to just stay put. "I think I have a right to speak up too," Becky said, unyielding. Reluctantly, I agreed. I accepted her anger and decided to fight this together. We were greeted by my father-in-law, who was already aware of the plan. Entering the living room, we found Ryan, who appeared to have just woken up, lounging in his pajamas and watching TV. "Oh, weren't you supposed to be on a business trip, Ryan?" Startled by my sudden voice, Ryan jumped up. He started making lame excuses about how he was supposed to go, but then didn't need to. "Well, that doesn't matter now. What I want to know about is Vicky's injury," I stated firmly. "Oh, that clumsy her. Seems like she fell down the stairs and hit her forehead," Ryan replied. I was about to yell at my husband for feigning ignorance, but my father-in-law spoke first. "Enough. I know that Becky's injury is your fault," he said sternly. Becky chimed in, "Yeah, that's right." And I glared at Ryan, feeling cornered. Ryan started to look nervous, but then suddenly seemed to have an idea and argued back. "As if you have the right to talk. You never visited my parents, but I was the one taking care of them," Ryan said, smug and grinning, thinking I wouldn't be able to say anything. Indeed, I had kept quiet before, thinking he was right. But after hearing Becky's story, I knew Ryan's words were full of lies. "Oh, really? Leaving all the housework to your daughter and not spending time with your father is called taking care of the family?" "Yeah, ever since you brought me here, you've been lazing around at home," I retorted, feeling the weight of frustration. "Shut up. This is just a one-time thing. Usually, I'm the one working hard," Ryan snapped back. Watching Ryan boast, I pulled out my father-in-law's account of household expenses that I had previously obtained. It detailed not only the money in and out, but also how Ryan spent his time at his parents' house. "Let me tell you what's written here," I began, pointing to the document. June 10th, gave Ryan $200 for transportation. He lazed around all day as usual, went out at night, and returned in the morning. Food expenses increased because of Ryan's presence. I calmly read out the details. According to this, every time Ryan visited, he lied about me not giving him transportation money and received cash from his father. Taking advantage of my absence, Ryan had painted me as a stingy, evil wife to gain sympathy from his father. How can you not be ashamed of mooching off your parents at your age and getting all sorts of help too? I questioned, feeling sorry for him initially, thinking he didn't have any money and tried to help out. All that was a lie too. Cornered by our accusations, Ryan fell silent at a loss for words. "What have you been using all that money for, I wonder?" "Well, no need to say anything. You're probably just thinking of another pathetic lie." Ignoring Ryan's mumbling, I presented a photo in front of him. "You needed so much money because you were splurging at places like this, right?" "How do you know about this place?" Surprised that I knew about it, the color drained from his face. The secret that Becky had discovered while Ryan was visiting his parents was this. She thought Ryan was diligently caring for his father, but he was actually going out at night and returning in the morning. Suspicious, she secretly investigated and installed an app on his phone to track his location. After he left, she checked his whereabouts on a computer, always finding him at the same place. Researching online, Becky found out it was a gentleman's club. Shocked, she was about to call me when Ryan returned home. He found her researching the location and the club on the computer, and in a fit of rage, pushed her. Becky hit her head on the corner of a dresser, causing the bleeding, and the rest is as you know. After hearing Becky's story, I left my mother in the care of professionals for a few days and went to the club to gather evidence of Ryan's wasteful spending. The shock I felt seeing my husband cheerfully entering the club. The money for this visit, even if temporary, was taken from Becky's school fund, and he used it. "This, Dad, you're the worst," I said, presenting undeniable evidence. Ryan, cornered by the evidence, muttered weakly, "Isn't this normal for men?" and looked up at his father for support. "What are you talking about? Using your child's school money for your satisfaction is inexcusable for any man. I'm tired from work. Isn't it okay to have a little fun?" Vicky sighed in exasperation at Ryan's stubbornness. "Mom, do you know what kind of place that is?" "Huh? Oh no, I just took the photo and left immediately. I thought so. Here, take this, Vicky said, laying out several printed pages of the club's website on the table. Looking over them with my father-in-law, we saw that the outfits worn by the girls at the club were school uniforms. They all seemed to be adults, but it was a gentleman's club where they cosplayed in revealing school uniforms. Seeing this, I thought to myself, exposing my daughter of this age to such a world. I was filled with anger, but Becky seemed unfazed. So, Dad, you like this kind of stuff, huh? Gross, she commented, handing the papers to Ryan with a shudder, as if the idea was repulsive. Well, you don't have to say it like that, you know. If your clients at the schools found out about your love for girls with uniforms, it could be a big problem, right? I doubt your company, which sells educational materials to schools, would want to keep an employee with such hobbies, I said with an icy stare. Ryan turned pale. I quickly grabbed Ryan's schedule book, which was left in his business bag, and found it easily. Looking at this now, I know all the schools you've been visiting. Maybe I should inform your clients about your wonderful hobby. Please spare me that. I'm sorry. I went too far. I'll change my ways from now on. Realizing he couldn't escape, Ryan started trembling and knelt down. He apologized profusely. But years of frequenting those clubs, wasting money, not to mention injuring our daughter, were not forgivable. Who would believe a liar like you? I thought. Dad, I've consulted with a lawyer, and I'm ready to proceed with a divorce. I'll make sure you pay back all the money you squandered on your indulgences, plus compensation. This is the end for us. Ryan tried to cling to Becky, but she dodged him, saying, "You gross." Eventually, he broke down crying, and we glared at him coldly. Soon after the divorce was finalized, and I demanded from Ryan the $115,000 he had squandered and $30,000 in compensation. Word of his club visits leaked to his company. Ryan was fired, and even his father cut ties with him. Now he lives alone in a rundown house, barely making ends meet with day-to-day jobs. Unable to afford the compensation payments, he ended up borrowing money from shady lenders and now lives in fear of debt collectors. Meanwhile, I have found more time to myself after the divorce. With Becky's help, my mother's health improved significantly, and she no longer needs care. Now, the three of us women are enjoying a happy and harmonious life. That particular day, fatigue seemed to have taken a heavy toll on me. After tucking my daughter Nia into her crib, I collapsed onto my own bed and slipped into sleep almost instantly. Sometime later, I jolted awake to the sound of Nicholas crying in the dead of night. Still half asleep, I glanced at my mobile phone. 1:00 a.m., thankfully. I managed to snatch a brief nap earlier. Summoning what energy I had left, I dragged myself up, intending to comfort Nia in the living room. Just then, a sharp voice pierced the silence. "Shut up, be quiet." Momentarily disoriented, I couldn't pinpoint the source. Perhaps it was my mother-in-law Jamie, I reckoned, yelling from her room. "Yes, I'm coming to soothe her now," I mumbled, opening the living room door. To my shock, Jamie stood over the crib, glaring at Nia. Without a second thought, she struck Nia's face. "What are you doing?" I erupted, my voice resonating louder than ever. Jamie seemed taken aback for a fleeting moment. "Why didn't you soothe her sooner?" "This child is so noisy," she retorted, her voice tinged with panic. Rushing to shield Nia from Jamie's aggression, I couldn't fathom the situation. Hitting a baby? It was incomprehensible. My name is Candice, a 28-year-old housewife. Once an office worker, I now focus on household chores and childcare during my maternity leave. My husband, Miles, and I moved in with Jamie, my mother-in-law, about a year ago. With Miles frequently away due to his demanding job and his concern for leaving me alone during pregnancy, coupled with Jamie's solitude following my father-in-law's passing, we decided to live together. Initially, things went smoothly, but gradually, Jamie's true colors surfaced, and truth be told, I struggled. Candy, you're awfully slow at housework, aren't you? Can't you prepare better meals? Her criticisms echoed incessantly. I apologize for the confusion, but it seems like there are some repeated sentences and inconsistencies in the provided text. However, based on the available information, here's a revised version. I regret to say that Jamie consistently harassed me whenever an opportunity arose. While Willis, her husband, was still alive, I had no issues during visits to my in-laws' house, and I didn't particularly dislike Jamie at that time. However, after Willis passed away and we started living together, Jamie transformed into an unbearably selfish and rude presence in my life. Hurry up with the housework. You're really useless, you know. She would insult me with remarks that went beyond the realm of household chores. As I was pregnant, it was only natural for me to be slower with tasks, but Jamie seemed indifferent to that reality. Her focus appeared to be on relentlessly harassing me, with Miles frequently away on business trips, returning home only around midnight, even when not traveling. I found myself spending most of my days with Jamie. I clung to the hope that things would change once the baby arrived. I believed that living with her grandchild would soften Jamie, despite her rough demeanor. Desperately holding onto that hope, I consulted Miles about it on WhatsApp, ensuring not to disrupt his work. He expressed genuine regret, wishing he could be there for me during tough times. He also took care to admonish Jamie when they met, providing me with a slight sense of relief. Having Miles on my side made it somewhat more bearable when Jamie scolded me for not handling housework well enough during pregnancy. Eventually, I safely gave birth to a healthy baby girl. Blessedly, Miles managed to obtain permission from his company, citing the birth of our child. He left work early and rushed to the hospital just before I gave birth. When he held our newborn daughter, he marveled at her angelic cuteness, expressing genuine happiness. I, too, felt joy in bringing into the world the child of the man I love. I informed Jamie about the birth of our healthy baby girl through WhatsApp, assuming she might visit the hospital since we shared a living space. To my surprise, Jamie didn't show up, and she didn't respond on WhatsApp. The concern arose. Could she be uninterested in her granddaughter? Anxiety crept in as I pondered whether the harassment would persist even in this new chapter. As I grappled with these thoughts, the hospital room door swung open. Candice, how are you feeling? Wow, what a cute baby. It's a girl, right? She's going to be beautiful. It was my sister-in-law, La, who came to visit. La, kind and cheerful, had always been supportive. Married with children herself, I had decided to turn to her for parenting advice. What's her name? She inquired. Miles and I had chosen the name Nia. Oh, that's a nice name. Wait, hasn't Mom come? I explained that I had contacted Jamie, but received no response. La chuckled. She's really a pain sometimes, isn't she? Unpredictable and lacking common sense. I agreed, appreciating La's straightforward nature. She had once encouraged me to vent to her about living with Jamie, understanding Jamie's difficult personality. La refrained from admonishing Jamie unless absolutely necessary, knowing it could backfire on me. Little did I know that life would become more challenging after Nicholas was born. Upon returning home from the hospital with Nicola, Jamie seemed to ignore the baby's existence entirely. Instead, she demanded, "Hurry up and clean." Stunned, I placed Nicola in her crib and began cleaning. Jamie, about 5 minutes later, started yelling, "Candy, come here." Perplexed, I approached, and Jamie complained about the baby's crying. "Do something about her," she insisted, referring to Nicola as that baby and treating her as a nuisance. Jamie's mistreatment continued, criticizing Nicola's cries and yelling derogatory remarks. Each time Jamie yelled, Nicola cried louder, creating an uncomfortable atmosphere. Frustrated, I implored, "Her name is Nicola. Can you please call her by her name?" "Shut up. Don't tell me what to do. You're her mother. It's your job to take care of her and make sure I'm comfortable," Jamie retorted. "Look, she's crying again." Nicola's cries had escalated due to Jamie's harsh words, creating a distressing environment for both the baby and me. After putting Nicola to bed, I had to halt my chores and attend to her soothing needs. Yet even this interruption incurred Jamie's displeasure. Upon returning to my chores after settling Nicola, Jamie exclaimed, "Ah, this is really in the way, takes up so much space," as she kicked the crib. The crib shook, and Nicola woke up crying again. "What are you doing, Jamie? Shut up. It's your fault for insisting on putting such a big thing here," I retorted, exasperated. Yet it was Jamie who had suggested placing the bed in the living room to mitigate noise disturbances at night. "Are you complaining to me now? Stop arguing and soothe that noisy child," Jamie snapped, referring to Nicola in a derogatory manner. The situation felt untenable. Balancing household chores and childcare without incurring Jamie's wrath was proving increasingly challenging, and my exhaustion mounted. The constant criticism added to the strain. If I focused too much on childcare, I'd be scolded for being slow at housework, I lamented internally. And if I focus on chores, I'd be berated for my parenting, I added, feeling the weight of the conflicting expectations. With Miles away on a business trip for about 2 months, I felt the burden keenly. Attempts to seek solace and guidance from him over WhatsApp and phone calls were met with apologies and brief conversations. His apologies only added to my guilt, knowing he was working tirelessly for our family. Then, fatigue and stress reached a breaking point one night. Exhausted, I fell asleep soon after putting Nicola in her crib. In the wee hours, Nicola's cries roused me from slumber. Groggy, I checked my phone. 1 a.m., thankfully. I had managed a brief nap earlier. Summoning what little energy remained, I prepared to soothe Nicola in the living room. However, my efforts were interrupted by a commanding voice shouting, "Shut up, be quiet." Confused, I initially thought Jamie was berating me from her room. Resignedly, I responded, "Yes, I'm coming to soothe her now," and opened the living room door. To my shock, Jamie stood over the crib, glaring at Nicola. Without warning, she struck Nicola's face, prompting me to erupt in protest louder than ever before. Jamie seemed momentarily surprised by my outburst, caught off guard by the force of my reaction. "Why didn't you soothe her sooner? She's so noisy, this child." Jamie yelled back in a panic. Reacting swiftly, I rushed to the crib, lifting Nicola to shield her from Jamie's unwarranted aggression. The disbelief struck me hard. Hitting a 3-month-old baby. Could this person really be human? Nicola's cries escalated to a pitch I had never heard before, and her tiny face had turned a shade of red that sent shivers down my spine. In immediate distress, I dialed an ambulance. At the hospital, the doctor examined Nicola and assured me that, while her face was red, there was no concern about bruises or injuries. A wave of relief washed over me, but I felt on the verge of collapsing. The doctor inquired, "What happened? Did you drop her on the floor or something?" I explained the situation to the doctor when La, my sister-in-law, entered the room. In my panic, I had called Illa while in the ambulance. Miles was on a business trip and couldn't come immediately, so I reached out to Illa despite the late hour. Illa described Jamie hitting Nicola to the doctor, leaving him speechless, and she herself shook with anger. The next day, I returned home with Illa, bracing myself for the confrontation. I entered the house alone, and Jamie, acting as if nothing happened, continued harassing me as usual. "You're late. Hurry up and make breakfast. You missed taking out the trash because you came home in the morning. You really can't do housework," she berated. Exasperated, I interjected, "Enough. Did you forget what happened yesterday? You hit a 3-month-old baby, remember? How can you act so normally? First, apologize for yesterday." Jamie's face reddened with anger. "What? Why should I apologize? That child was the noisy one. I just slapped her because she wouldn't listen. It's a part of discipline. I thought she wouldn't be quiet otherwise. That's not discipline, it's violence. Enough with the noise. Just do your chores already." I asserted, my voice firm. You don't regret it at all. Don't even think you did anything wrong. I called for Lila to enter the living room. Lila, please come in. Jamie was taken aback. Mom, what are you doing? I can't believe you did such a thing. No, Jamie stammered, flustered by Layla's sudden arrival. Mom, you do realize that what you did is legally punishable, right? Layla pointed out, her tone stern. Jamie's face turned pale. Lila, you're not going to sue your own mother, are you? Jamie pleaded, attempting to downplay the severity of her actions. Lila corrected her. The one who's going to sue is Candice. I'll just be her lawyer. But wait, it was just a part of her education. Who would agree that hitting a baby is education? This is a case of assault, I asserted firmly. No matter how much Jamie tried to justify her actions, such behavior could never be excused. I'll definitely sue you. Be prepared, I warned Jamie, determined to seek justice. At that moment, Jamie began to cry quietly. I'm sorry, Candy. I'd always lose control when I get angry and end up regretting it later. I've always been depressed and regretful about how I treated you and Nia. I truly am sorry for what happened. Why did I raise my hand to her? Jamie continued speaking through her tears, expressing remorse. I'd always wanted a boy for the eldest grandson. It was also Willis's wish. It might be an old-fashioned thought, but we always hoped for a boy to carry on the family line. And when a girl was born instead, I was happy about the birth of a granddaughter, but also felt like I failed to fulfill a promise to Willis. And every time I got angry, I couldn't control myself. I'm really sorry. Jamie, please calm down. Let's talk properly first, I suggested, trying to diffuse the tension. However, Jamie persisted. No, I've done something terrible. No amount of apologies will ever be enough. She kept apologizing repeatedly, and I felt my heart waver, almost considering forgiveness. But then Leela spoke up. Don't take her seriously, Candy. Mom always pretends to be deeply remorseful like this when she's cornered, just to end criticism against her. She did the same when Dad found out about her affair. He forgave her because he fell for her act, but her tears dried up immediately afterward. This is probably just an act too, right? You can't fool me. Leela's astute observation made Jamie falter. What are you saying, Layla? I examined Jamie closely, realizing that the tears that were flowing heavily just a moment ago had already dried up. It was likely fake crying. Jamie, I can't forgive you anymore. How twisted can you be to try to weasel out of what you've done? Wait a minute. I'm not trying to escape anything, okay? Okay, I understand, but we've already decided to take legal action, I asserted. As I spoke, Jamie's face turned red with anger. Don't joke with me. Why should I be subjected to this by a daughter-in-law like you? How insolent. Just then, the sound of the house key turning was heard. Candice, is Nicholas safe? Miles' voice echoed through the tense atmosphere. Why are you here? I was taken aback. I had only contacted him on WhatsApp. I thought Miles couldn't come since he was on a business trip. I had called him several times in the middle of the night, but then he drove straight here. Miles had been driving since 3:00 a.m. and arrived this morning. I didn't know Miles was coming too. Mom, cut it out. I've been hearing about your harassment from Candy, and I've been warning you every time, haven't I? And now you've gone and hit my precious Nicola. I'll never forgive you for this, Mom, Miles declared sternly. Even you're blaming me? How cruel. After I raised you and Jamie retorted, her voice tinged with indignation. What are you talking about? You always left us with Aunt to play around. Our memories are filled with the meals Aunt cooked, not you, Mom. Just give it up. Besides, I think the doctor already reported it yesterday. The hospital knows Mom hit her, so I think it's just a matter of time before the police come. Bella chimed in, her tone resolute. No, wait. You're okay with your mother being arrested? I'd rather not have someone who hits a 3-month-old baby around. No matter what you say, Mom, you have no one on your side now, Miles countered, his voice unwavering. Jamie finally seemed to understand her situation, her face pale and slumped. Soon, the police arrived, and Jamie was arrested. As a first-time offender, she received a suspended sentence. However, Miles and Illa cut ties with her and issued restraining orders against her. Miles moved out of the in-laws' house with me and Nicola, renting an apartment while looking for a permanent place. We stayed briefly with Lula, which was a great help. Candice, I'm really sorry for everything. I'll take parental leave if I can't get it. I'll change departments or even jobs to ensure Nicholas's safety, Miles promised earnestly. His dedication filled me with hope. His company had some issues with the working environment, and he couldn't get parental leave, so he resigned and found another job. Now he comes home on time, helps with Nicola and the housework. We live in a high-rise near Liz family, often gathering for meals or enjoying barbecues. I don't know what's become of Jamie, but I heard from neighbors that after her arrest, she's become completely isolated and doesn't go out anymore. Prideful Jamie probably can't bear being known as someone who did such terrible things. Well, it doesn't matter to me anymore. She doesn't know where we moved, so there's no chance of meeting her unexpectedly. I plan to live happily, supporting each other as a family with Miles, Nicola, and Lila's family. Listen up, folks. I need to share something that came to light recently about my wife, Sherry. It turns out she was involved in a relationship with a younger man. I've got the evidence right here, and I want you all to take a look. These pictures were taken during a family gathering, and what unfolded next was quite unexpected. During our annual family get-together, my husband, Neil, abruptly stood up and declared to everyone that I was having an affair. He distributed the photos to 15 relatives, including in-laws. As everyone examined the pictures, confusion spread across their faces. Some questioned Neil, demanding an explanation. "What's this all about, Neil?" they asked. Sure, the photos showed Sherry with a young man in a suit, but it wasn't immediately clear what was going on. Neil persisted, pointing out that the suit was an expensive luxury brand, insinuating that Sherry had been secretly meeting with this well-dressed guy. To add fuel to the fire, he presented another photo featuring a different man than the one in the suit. My father-in-law and mother-in-law, standing together, were visibly shocked. My mother-in-law, in disbelief, questioned Sherry about the truth. Sherry admitted to meeting these two men without informing Neil, expressing regret for not being forthright. In response, Neil seemed disappointed but took pride in his perceived victory. He emphasized Sherry's admission, claiming, "Did you hear what she just said? She said she could never tell me. Of course, she can't tell me that she was a married woman seducing two young men." A heavy silence descended upon the room as Neil declared his separation from Sherry. The atmosphere grew cold, and tension filled the air. Amidst the solemnity, I couldn't help but burst into laughter. "What are you saying?" I exclaimed, unable to contain my disbelief. I felt a wave of sadness wash over me. I couldn't believe how foolish I had been. My words didn't just elicit a reaction from my husband. They resonated with all our relatives gathered there. It wasn't surprising that those suspected of cheating on my husband found my situation amusing. Their laughter seemed to pierce through the icy tension in the room, fueled by anger and disbelief. My father-in-law, however, broke the silence and addressed me sternly. "Sherry, what are you thinking, laughing in a situation like this? Such an attitude, while bowing down, is unforgivable." I felt compelled to apologize, but I couldn't deny the humor in the situation. "I'm sorry, sir, but it truly was amusing. I couldn't help it. I was merely conversing with these two men," I explained, rising to my feet, joined by my husband. Taking a deep breath, I continued, revealing the real reason for my secrecy. I couldn't tell Neil because I was investigating his affair with them. My revelation left the room in stunned silence once more, the atmosphere heavy with tension. I admitted to meeting these men, but I vehemently denied any infidelity on my part. It was time to address the situation head-on and end my relationship with Neil. But as soon as I made my decision known, my husband lunged at me, incredulous at my explanation. You were investigating my affair. What kind of excuse is that? No one here would believe such a story. Come clean, admit you're cheating, and apologize to all of us. His accusations felt like a slap in the face, his disbelief palpable. But I refused to back down. It's not a ludicrous excuse. Who's kidding whom here? Lying about my fidelity? Anyone can see through that, I retorted, my resolve unwavering. My in-laws, bewildered by my newfound assertiveness, pressed for clarity. Sherry, what did you mean about Neil's affair? I can't make sense of any of this. Please explain, they implored, seeking understanding in the midst of chaos. I took a moment to gather my thoughts before responding. I'm just like him, I admitted, turning to address my stepfather and stepmother. I was planning to discuss this with you both later when we have more time. I must apologize for the sudden twist in events. Allow me to clarify the situation step by step. The man in the suit I was meeting with happens to be a lawyer. I sought his advice regarding my husband's affair. As soon as I mentioned the word lawyer, my in-laws appeared even more perplexed. To shed light on the matter, I picked up one of the photos my husband had distributed and directed their attention to the lawyer's badge on his suit, though it was barely visible in the picture. Approximately 6 months ago, Neil underwent a noticeable transformation. He had never been particularly concerned about his appearance, but suddenly he began purchasing high-end products without informing me. Earlier, he remarked that the suit in question belonged to a very expensive luxury brand. It seemed that he had picked up this habit during his newfound attention to personal grooming. As I explained, my in-laws and relatives listened in silence, but my husband's face turned red with immediate denial. He questioned my accusations, asking what was wrong with being well-dressed. He assumed I was accusing him of infidelity solely based on his appearance, dismissing it as an improbable excuse. I clarified that his attire was not the sole reason for my suspicion. I had confronted the issue directly by speaking with the woman he was allegedly involved with. Astonishingly, her husband had approached me first, initiating the conversation. Turning to my in-laws, I pointed out the photo my husband had given to my father-in-law, revealing the other man in the suit as the spouse of Neil's supposed lover. Neil, still in disbelief, exclaimed, "Are you being serious? Is this some kind of coincidence? It's hard for me to believe." I couldn't believe it myself when Jimmy, a close friend of mine and the husband of the woman my husband was cheating with, sought my advice. It was a startling revelation. For the past 6 months, Jimmy suspected his wife of infidelity and confided in me about it. In collaboration with Jimmy, we decided to hire a private investigator to delve into the matter. Unexpectedly, Neil's name emerged during the investigation, along with evidence of Jimmy's wife's affair. She had already confessed to cheating on Jimmy. What astonished me further was the discovery that Neil had falsely claimed to be single, leaving Jimmy's wife shocked to learn of my existence. Regardless, the affair itself was unforgivable. Reflecting on the events, I retrieved an envelope from my bag containing crucial evidence. Distributing it to my in-laws and relatives, I revealed the truth. Neil had accused me of infidelity when, in fact, he was the one engaged in an affair. My laughter earlier wasn't out of amusement, but rather disbelief at Neil's audacity and stupidity. He assumed I was oblivious to his deceit, but his actions spoke volumes. As I spoke, a mixture of anger and disappointment resonated in the room. My in-laws and relatives grasped the gravity of the situation. Neil's behavior wasn't just deceitful, it was reprehensible. The evidence of his affair had been meticulously gathered, and his cheating partner had confessed. Now, it was Neil who owed our relatives an apology. The tables had turned drastically. However, Neil's response took an unexpected turn. I must admit, I was the one involved in an affair, but my husband's explanation shifted the blame entirely onto me, claiming it was Sherry's fault. According to him, since we had no children due to Sherry's infertility, she was essentially useless, unable to fulfill the societal expectation of bearing children and taking care of household chores. This justification left the faces of my parents-in-law and other relatives even more somber. It's true that we had been married for about 3 years without being able to conceive, prompting me to undergo fertility treatment. I had asked my husband to join me in the process, but he was uncooperative, placing the blame squarely on me. He insisted on having children but was unwilling to undergo the necessary steps, providing only the specimen and leaving the rest to me. My father-in-law couldn't contain his frustration at my husband's selfishness and raised his voice, challenging the notion of Sherry being deemed useless. He questioned the idea of discarding her like a tool when she wasn't needed, highlighting how Sherry's support in our marriage had ensured an uninterrupted life. Father-in-law emphasized that household chores and bearing children were not to be taken for granted. The tension among the in-laws intensified, and my nerves were on edge. Some relatives, including housewives like me, were deeply offended by my husband's assertion that it was common sense for women to handle housework and bear children. It was not just a personal insult, but a broader affront to housewives and individuals facing infertility worldwide. My husband's narrow perspective became apparent. He only considered what was directly in front of him, oblivious to the complexities faced by others. In this tense atmosphere, my father-in-law expressed his anger, making it clear that my husband's mindset was flawed and superficial. Despite the tension, my husband astonishingly uttered the impossible words, treating Sherry as if she were a tool and deeming her even less valuable due to infertility. I've reconsidered, and I want to thank Sherry. You're right, Dad. I want to be happy, and having a child is essential for that. Do you understand? My father-in-law, veins almost bursting from his intense emotions, leaned in close to my husband, who is my mother-in-law, and had to step in to intervene. Neil, I know you want a child, but cheating on Sherry and deceiving us was not the way to go about it. Why did you accuse her of cheating on you? Is it just to avoid paying alimony? Pretending she cheated allows you to get a divorce and receive alimony. That's why I did it. Well, even if I fail, I can always pay for it to resolve everything. My mother-in-law, almost losing herself, tried to confront him physically, but my father-in-law stopped her, urging her to calm down. He reasoned, beating up a guy like this only hurts you. He doesn't even deserve your punch, but he's our son, and we can't just keep quiet about it. You're older, Mom, you need to calm down. I thought that was a good way to go about it, but I can't help it. Sherry and I are getting a divorce soon, and I'm moving out of the house. Sherry, I'll pay you alimony too, so don't complain, okay? And don't come crying back to me about how much you miss me. Whatever, do what you want. You're the one who should better not come crying back to me after our divorce. I'm not going to cry for you, you idiot. Well, this will be the last time, so I'll just hear you say goodbye, Sherry. What do you have to say? All the relatives were already in a state of anger, beyond furious at him, who was swearing to the very end. In the midst of this, I smiled at him and gave him a few words. You said you'd throw me away because I'm infertile. But that's a funny thing to say because I'm not infertile. You are. What? What'd you just say? I'm not infertile, and now you're throwing me away. I don't care anymore, though. You've not only deceived me, but also your mom and dad and all your relatives. You were way out of line as a person, and I don't even want to breathe the same air with you anymore. Hey, Sherry, answer my question. What did you just say? That I'm infertile? My husband, who had been unbothered so far, was finally upset. I'm not bluffing. It was you who was infertile, not me. When I asked for fertility treatment, you blamed me and were uncooperative. You just gave me the specimen and left the rest to me. And that's when I found out that you were infertile. Screw you. You're lying, aren't you? You're lying just to get me in trouble, aren't you? I don't believe you. I don't need your belief anymore. It doesn't matter now that I know the truth about you. My husband desperately interrogated me. My in-laws and other relatives were unaware of his infertility, and it must have been surprising for them. However, the revelation no longer held significance. The consensus among the relatives was clear: my husband and I should get a divorce. It may not matter to you, But it matters to me, Sherry. Why didn't you tell me? I wanted kids, didn't you know? He questioned. I explained that I had tried to tell him, but he wouldn't listen. Instead, I sought advice from my friend Jimmy, only to discover that Jimmy's wife was having an affair with my husband. I'm never going to be able to have kids, maybe with fertility treatments, maybe not. Well, for someone like you who doesn't value your family, I don't think you'll be able to continue your fertility treatments. Infertility treatment is hard work, and with the support of your family, you might have been able to continue. But you no longer have anyone to rely on, so why don't you just give up? I declared. He looked to his in-laws and relatives for support. But after all the inhumane things he had said and done, no one answered him. In the end, I divorced my husband, and Jimmy divorced his wife. We both filed for alimony, and Jim's wife blamed Neil for her divorce, causing him constant trouble. Despite his ongoing pursuit of having kids through fertility treatments, he struggled to find a marriage partner due to the repercussions of his actions. A few years later, I gave birth to a healthy baby girl. After my divorce, I remarried, even though I never thought it would happen. My current husband, who has also experienced divorce, expressed his desire to start a new life with me. We support each other, and my daughter is growing up in a happy environment. However, I don't take it for granted. I still believe. Now that the elderly patriarch has passed away, I find myself in the role of the eldest son, essentially the decision-maker for the family. Allow me to make it clear, the entirety of the inheritance belongs to us. Mom and Nolan will receive nothing. Prepare yourselves for this, and I apologize for the inconvenience, but Ryan would likely prefer it this way. It's more fitting for Aaron, who consistently prioritized Ryan's well-being, to inherit everything, rather than it going to the useless Olivia and Nolan. Despite Ryan's declining health, Aaron and his wife, Grace, never bothered to visit him, despite numerous invitations. After the funeral, their sudden appearance shocked everyone as they made audacious claims about taking the entire inheritance. Nolan, the second son, was visibly upset, and rightfully so. We had always strived to do what was best for Ryan, and Aaron and Grace's unbelievable behavior was intolerable. While pondering this, Nolan finally spoke up, expressing his displeasure. The words he uttered turned Aaron and Grace pale. I am Olivia, a 71-year-old housewife, living with my husband and Nolan. Ryan, as the second son of a major corporation-owning family, did not take over as CEO, but still had substantial assets. Despite his wealth, Ryan was frugal, detesting wastefulness and encouraging savings. However, Aaron and Grace, who were extravagant and often spent recklessly, faced financial trouble and sought our help regularly. On one occasion, Aaron and Grace approached our home together. Nolan, avoiding them, had gone out. Ignoring our disapproval, Aaron addressed Ryan, saying, "Dad, we're struggling with our finances this month. Could you help us out a bit?" Ryan, frustrated with their reckless spending, frowned. Grace chimed in, attempting to persuade Ryan, "You know, we have Colton too. He's about to enter high school and wants to go to a prestigious private school. But private schools are expensive, right? Colton's your beloved grandson. Maybe you could help a little." Their audacious request, despite needing help, astounded us. However, due to Ryan's deep affection for Colton, he agreed to provide financial assistance, setting strict conditions to prevent wasteful spending and ensuring Colton wouldn't suffer. Aaron and Grace, aware of Ryan's soft spot for Colton, exploited it, using him as a reason to secure the financial support they sought. The same pattern repeated itself, with us reluctantly agreeing to give them money following Ryan's instructions. I transferred a reasonable sum to Aaron and Grace's account, hoping for a positive change in our lives. However, our efforts seemed futile. More misfortune struck when Ryan collapsed, prompting Nolan to call an ambulance. Ryan was diagnosed with advanced cancer, and the treatment offered no guarantees. Devastated by this news, we resolved to support Ryan until the end. I visited the hospital daily, while Nolan, despite working, spent his days off by Ryan's bedside. Yet despite his deteriorating condition, Aaron and his family never visited. Ryan grew increasingly weary and longed to see Colton, whom he adored. Unable to bear seeing Ryan so lonely, I contacted Aaron and Grace, requesting them to visit with Colton. However, they responded dismissively, stating it was a hassle and never showed up. Ryan's battle with cancer lasted about a year, taking a heavy toll on him. After a long struggle, Ryan passed away, leaving an indescribable void. Nolan supported me, even though he must have been hurting too. Despite being overwhelmed with grief, I couldn't help with the funeral arrangements. Aaron and Grace never offered assistance, remaining heartless even in the face of Ryan's death. Ryan's funeral, a quiet affair attended by close family and friends, saw no sign of Aaron and Grace. After the funeral, as Nolan and I placed flowers and sympathy cards on the altar, the doorbell rang. We exchanged glances, realizing it was Aaron and his family. Colton's presence, after such a long absence, felt strange. Aaron casually mentioned they couldn't make it to the funeral due to a family trip they had planned. Grace and Colton followed him into the living room, their audacity astonishing us. Apologetic words seemed insincere, and their lack of empathy hurt deeply. I was even more taken aback when Aaron uttered something unbelievable. Now that the old man's gone, as the eldest, I'm pretty much in charge. Listen up, the entire inheritance is ours. Mom and Nolan get nothing, just so you know, he declared confidently. In disbelief, I blurted out, sorry about this, but Ryan would be happier this way. It's better for the inheritance to go to Aaron, who always considered Ryan first, than to useless Olivia and Nolan. Aaron and Grace's outrageous claims stunned me. After leaving everything to us and enjoying their easy life, they now showed up to claim Ryan's inheritance. I couldn't bear the thought of even a part of the inheritance ending up in Aaron and Grace's hands. While we were struggling with this dilemma, Nolan suddenly spoke up, flipping the situation. I've been thinking Colton doesn't really look like Aaron, Nolan stated. Everyone, including Aaron's family and myself, was shocked by this statement. Now there's no time for this, Nolan. What are you saying? Colton is definitely Aaron's child. He just takes after me. Grace reacted strongly to Nolan's casual remark. Her face turned pale, as if a taboo subject had been broached. Why are you so flustered? I just mentioned it casually because I was curious. Also, Colton doesn't seem to resemble Grace either, or is it just me? Nolan suggested. As we took a closer look at Colton's face, he didn't seem to resemble Nolan or Grace, especially since Grace claimed he looks like me, which didn't seem quite right. Aaron, apparently thinking the same, turned pale and glared at Grace. Are you accusing me of cheating? Could Colton not be my son? Aaron said, grabbing Grace by the collar. Grace frantically denied it, saying, no, that's not true. But her denial lacked credibility. The situation was escalating, and without intervention, it could spiral out of control. Eventually, Nolan stepped in, saying, calm down. It'll all be clear once we do the DNA test. We decided to conduct the test. Grace kept arguing, saying there's no need for that, and doubting our parental bond. Although Aaron complained about this, he seemed determined to take a DNA test with Colton in the near future, not swayed by Grace's words. For a few days, I had little contact with Aaron and Grace, mostly spending my time sorting through Ryan's belongings. Then, one day, the doorbell rang again. As Nolan and I wondered who it could be, Aaron entered the living room alone. It was unusual for him to visit our house by himself. I made coffee and offered him a seat. With a look of humiliation, Aaron placed a document on the table, the DNA test result. It stated that there was no paternal relationship between Colton and Aaron. In other words, Colton wasn't Aaron's child. I've been deceived by Grace. Colton must be the child of her lover. She betrayed me. Aaron exclaimed, his face turning red with anger. While cheating is undoubtedly wrong, Aaron may deserve some sympathy for being deceived. However, I couldn't find it in me to sympathize with Aaron. We hadn't forgotten Aaron's past unreasonable behavior, and Grace's betrayal didn't justify taking Aaron's side. I wouldn't be satisfied until I thoroughly confronted Grace. Please help me. Your oldest son was deceived, and you must be upset too. We need to unite as a family now. Aaron pleaded, taking her hands. Still, I couldn't bring myself to cooperate with Aaron, and my feelings were cooling even more. Seeing this, Nolan spoke up. Sorry, but I can't support you, Aaron. You betrayed Dad too. We haven't forgotten that Aaron was one of those who abandoned Ryan. If he had supported Ryan, then maybe his loneliness would have been lessened. Thinking of this, I couldn't easily forgive Aaron. That was a different time. I was trying to spend time with my family, but they're not our family anymore. Despite our reluctance, we agreed to call Grace. Since the decision to do the DNA test, Grace had been taking Colton out often, rarely coming home. Grace didn't show her face even when Aaron contacted her, so I decided to contact her using Ryan's inheritance as a pretext. I wouldn't normally do this, nor did I want to, but I did because I have a secret plan, Nolan said soon after. The doorbell rang, and it seemed Grace and Colton had arrived. As I opened the door to let them in, Grace frowned at Aaron's jacket hanging next to the door. You didn't tell me Aaron was here. Did you deceive me, Olivia? Grace exclaimed, about to leave with Colton. If they left now, calling them under the guise of discussing the inheritance would be pointless. Just as I was wondering how to keep them, Nolan stepped forward. Wait, Grace, calm down. If you leave now, things might get worse. It's better to talk here where we can control Aaron than alone. It's in your best interest. Certainly, if Grace and Aaron were to talk alone, the outcome could be unpredictable. Aaron might even become violent in his anger. In such cases, probably only Nolan could restrain him. Convinced by Nolan's reasoning, Grace and her family entered the house. As they passed through the living room door, Aaron glared at them. In response, Nolan, urging calmness, said, "Settle down," and then seated everyone and served coffee. Grace and her family looked visibly uncomfortable, but we managed to calm the situation. At that time, I didn't understand why Nolan had chosen such a complicated approach. Why did he need to gather us all here? Wouldn't talking to them individually have worked? But later, thanks to a trump card Nolan revealed, it all became clear. I understood why he had gathered us in that place. The room fell silent, with both Aaron and Grace seeming to gauge each other's reactions. Unable to bear the tension, Grace suddenly apologized, saying, "I'm so sorry. I never intended for this to happen. I was deceived too." Grace, in tears, recounted her story. Her affair had begun over a decade ago with a colleague from her workplace. At the time, she had already been in a relationship with him before meeting Aaron. However, her lover was married with children. Grace claimed they drifted apart, and that's when she met Aaron. Aaron fell for her at first sight and passionately confessed his feelings. Grace, whose feelings for her lover were fading, started dating Aaron and eventually married him. About a year later, Grace reconnected with her distant lover. She hadn't expected to meet him again as she had quit her job by then. Their rekindled romance led to Grace becoming enthralled once more, and that's when she became pregnant with Colton. However, around the same time, her lover moved away with his family, effectively abandoning Grace. She knew it was wrong not to tell Aaron that Colton wasn't his child, but she didn't have the confidence to raise a child alone. So Grace lied that Colton was Aaron's child and continued that lie. If he hadn't left, I would have been honest about the affair and that Colton wasn't Aaron's child. It's all his fault. Grace continued crying. Colton was silent, shocked by the revelation. That doesn't excuse what you did. You betrayed me. You destroyed my happiness, Aaron retorted. Grace's excuses seemed incoherent, and even Aaron couldn't accept such explanations. The argument escalated into a fight, with Aaron and Grace grabbing each other. As if to admonish Aaron and Grace, Nolan clapped his hands, saying, "If you want to fight, go ahead. But I have something important to say too." Nolan's words immediately stopped their quarrel. The mention of the inheritance they were fixated on seemed enough to calm their anger. Seemingly agreeing to a truce, the two sat down. Seeing them seated, Nolan smiled with satisfaction and pulled out an envelope from his pocket. This is Dad's will. He had it written by a trustworthy lawyer during his time in the hospital. It clearly states how the inheritance is to be divided. I was unaware of the existence of a will. Probably Ryan had directly asked Nolan to arrange for a lawyer. Nolan opened the envelope and began to read the contents of the letter inside. What he read was astonishing. The inheritance would be divided, with half going to my wife Olivia and 1/4 each to my son Nolan and my grandson Colton. The atmosphere changed dramatically as Nolan read this line. Aaron turned pale, exclaiming, "That can't be right." He lunged at Nolan, snatching the will and reading it, his eyes widening to their limits. How can this be? Why is there nothing for me? As the eldest son, Aaron had always assumed with certainty that he would receive a larger share of the inheritance. Yet, hearing that he wasn't allocated even a small part, Aaron couldn't possibly accept it. Disheartened, he slumped to the ground, repeatedly reading the will, hoping for a different outcome. However, the content remained unchanged. Taking the will from Aaron, I reread it to confirm, and it seemed there was no mistake in what Nolan had read. Naturally, Aaron, you and your wife had received substantial support from Dad. Dad was well aware that all the money was being used for your frivolities. That's why he decided not to leave anything for you. Nolan spoke calmly. Ryan's secret trump card had indeed managed to plunge Aaron into despair. By the way, I've already informed your parents, as per Dad's instructions, that the portion of the inheritance going to Colton will be temporarily held by your parents. So it's better not to think you can misuse Colton's inheritance, Nolan continued. Aaron was left questioning how this could be. It seemed that Nolan and Ryan had carefully acted to prevent selfish wastage. In that case, surely the portion allocated to Colton would be used for his future. Ryan had been concerned about Colton until the end. The two issues that surrounded us, Grace's infidelity and Ryan's inheritance, were finally resolved. We no longer needed to devote time to Aaron and Grace. After the discussion, Aaron's family returned home, looking dejected. The next steps were for them to discuss among themselves. As expected, Aaron and Grace ended up divorcing. We who had heard Grace's confession that day became undeniable witnesses, and Aaron demanded substantial compensation from Grace. Further disputes arose over the custody of Colton, as both wanted sole custody, knowing that Colton would eventually secure the inheritance. Myself, Nolan, and Grace's parents intervened in the negotiations. Eventually, it was decided that Colton would stay with Grace's parents until he came of age. Once the divorce was finalized, Aaron started visiting our house frequently, saying, "Let's live together." Feeling unable to accept him as family after all had transpired, we moved out, almost fleeing from Aaron. We changed our contact details, making it unlikely for Aaron to reach us. Grace, for her part, seems to be having a tough time. From what I've heard, her parents are furious over the incident. They paid the compensation, but until she repays it in full, she's not even allowed to see Colton. Meanwhile, we are living a happy life, following Ryan's philosophy. We carefully save the inheritance we received and make sure not to squander it, even though we have money. Since then, Nolan has been working diligently and was recognized for his abilities. John from B asked him, "Why don't you come to work for our company?" So he changed jobs, and now he seems to be an executive at the company where John is the CEO. I still consider Colton my grandson despite everything that happened, so I asked Grace's parents if I could visit him. He recently got into his first choice high school, so we celebrated by going out for a delicious meal. The incident with Aaron and Grace remains a deep emotional scar, but it also taught us the importance of relationships. I will use this lesson to live my life going forward. My name is Sophia, and at 31, I work part-time at a neighborhood supermarket. Today marks the beginning of November, a time when things start to get busy as we head towards the year end. The manager approached me, expressing interest in discussing some time off over Christmas. It felt unusual, as it's not often I request time off. The truth is, I began, we're thinking of spending Christmas at my husband's parents' house this year. I'll need to take the 24th and 25th off. Oh, that's what it's about. Of course, that's fine, the manager replied reassuringly. You're always working hard, Sophia. Thank you. That's a great help. Isn't your husband's family based quite far away, and you're from around here, right? The manager inquired. Yes, I'm from the neighboring town, but my husband is from Boston, I explained. Boston, huh? That's quite a distance, the manager remarked. Yes, it is. Unfortunately, due to circumstances, we haven't been able to introduce Alexander yet, I shared. Even more reason for you to head back. Don't worry about the store. Go and visit, the manager encouraged. Thank you. I appreciate your understanding, I expressed gratefully. Alexander is my 2-year-old son, currently attending a child care center. When I gave birth 2 years ago, a certain societal issue made it difficult to introduce him, and we haven't found the right time. Recently, things have finally started to calm down, and it seemed like a good time. My husband, Lucas, is a medical technician at a hospital, making it difficult for him to take time off, so we were particularly keen to make it happen this Christmas. Later, Lucas returned home after Alexander was asleep, and as we shared a late dinner, he brought up the discussion we had agreed upon regarding getting time off from work. Oh, by the way, I'll call my dad, Lucas mentioned. He tried to reach me while I was on my way home. Whenever there's news, it's always my dad who calls. My mom is the quiet type. She tends to delegate communication tasks to my dad. That's true. Now that you mention it, I nodded in agreement. My father-in-law has a cheerful personality, Lucas added, and he was quite friendly when we first visited to announce our marriage. He's always laughing and engaging in conversation. On the other hand, mother-in-law, as I put it, is quiet and speaks sparingly. Honestly, since getting married, we've hardly had the chance to converse, and I was hoping this visit to Lucas's home would help close the distance a bit. Lucas ended the call with his dad and turned to me, saying, Dad is really excited to meet Alexander. He can't stop talking about it. Let me know if there's anything you want or need, he said, casting a thoughtful glance my way. I couldn't help but wonder what would unfold when we arrived, but I found solace in their excitement. My parents had also urged us to go this year, insisting we introduce Alexander. But you love father-in-law and mother-in-law too, don't you? Poof, we're both in the same boat, aren't we? Anticipation filled us as we finally returned to Lucas's home. The day we had been eagerly awaiting had arrived, Christmas morning. After about a 4-hour drive, we pulled up to Lucas's house just before noon. I noticed sister-in-law's family's car parked there, indicating their early arrival. Merry Christmas, we called out as we stepped into the entrance. There, with a beaming smile, stood father-in-law. Good job on the drive. Take it easy today. In his arms was Ava, sister-in-law's daughter. Oh, Ava, you've grown so much, I explained. I'm 6 years old now, she announced proudly. Really? You're in elementary school, I replied, amazed. Oh, there's Alexander, Ava said, stepping down from father-in-law's embrace to greet him. Alexander returned her smile, melting our hearts. Come on in, father-in-law ushered us into the living room, where sister-in-law Isabella and her husband awaited. Isabella's husband offered a warm smile, while Isabella herself appeared distant. Merry Christmas, we greeted them, but there was no response from Isabella. Feeling a bit awkward, I tried to brush it off as Lucas joined us and greeted them warmly. Isabella, Henry, Merry Christmas, he said. Oh, we haven't seen each other for a while, have we? How have you been? Isabella, who had been staring at us until a moment ago, now flashed us a smile. Did they just ignore me? It seemed like neither Isabella's husband nor Lucas noticed. Maybe I'm overthinking this, I thought, trying to shake off the discomfort as I settled into the living room. Lucas watched Alexander while I offered to help mother-in-law in the kitchen. I'm good, really, he insisted, but I knew it was important to lend a hand when we could. As Lucas kept an eye on Alexander, I made my way to the kitchen, where mother-in-law was busy. Merry Christmas, mother-in-law. Let me help you, I'd offered. But as soon as I spoke, she shot me a glare, bumped my shoulder, and said, "You're in the way," before retreating to the living room. I could hear her say, "Oh, Lucas, Merry Christmas. Have you been well? What's going on? First, sister-in-law, and now mother-in-law. Did I do something wrong?" I couldn't think of anything. Lucas and I have been married for 4 years, and it's been 2 years since Alexander was born. We haven't really spoken or even communicated much over the phone during this time. What could it be? I don't understand. Maybe I shouldn't let it bother me. We were planning to head home later that day, so I decided I would discuss it with Lucas when we had the time and stopped worrying about it for the moment. When I returned to the living room and took Alexander from Lucas, father-in-law said, "Here you go, Alexander, monetary gifts for you." Alexander seemed really happy with the envelope father-in-law handed him. "Ah, Sophia, did you hear that?" Alexander just said, "Thank you" to me. What a smart kid. Father-in-law looked really happy. But what caught my attention was the sight of mother-in-law and sister-in-law grinning as soon as Alexander received the envelope. It wasn't just a simple grin, it seemed rather sarcastic. I instinctively felt they were up to something, but I reassured myself. Nothing like this has ever happened before. It must all be in my head. And so time passed, and in the evening we headed home. The next day, we went to my parents' house since we see them often. Alexander was all smiles when he saw his grandparents. "Merry Christmas. Your grandpa and grandma have presents for you." Lucas and I were a bit taken aback by how much my parents spoiled Alexander. Just like the day before, my dad handed Alexander monetary gifts. "Ah, oh, Sophia, did you hear that? Alexander just said, 'Thank you' to me. You're kidding." That's exactly what father-in-law said. Everyone laughed. As I took the monetary gifts from Alexander, I felt something unusual with my hand. Why does it feel so heavy? I had not sensed anything inside the envelope when I received it from my father-in-law the day before. Yet I couldn't help but wonder at that moment. He wouldn't have put $100 in here, would he? Is that even okay? I decided to chalk it up to my parents' indulgent love for Alexander. Our home is about a 30-minute drive from where we were, so we ate lunch and then headed back. After giving Alexander a bath and putting him to bed, I decided to check the monetary gifts. Oh, it is indeed $100, just like last year. Huh, I kind of feel guilty. Well, we'll have to give something back in return, won't we? Just like last year, my parents didn't hold back, given I'm an only child, and Alexander is their first grandchild. I understood their affection, and yet I was a little flabbergasted. Nevertheless, I felt grateful, so I jotted down the amount of money received. But my dad seemed quite eager too. He was totally in sync with my father-in-law. This year will be interesting. Last year, since we couldn't meet, they had sent us a gift card, and the amount on the card was $100. They were thrilled to have a grandson, weren't they? Remembering my father-in-law holding Alexander and talking happily the day before, I continued the conversation and opened the envelope. That's when the unexpected happened. Wait, what? A leaf. There was a single green leaf inside the envelope. I was at a loss for words. Then Lucas, startled by my reaction, exclaimed, "What a leaf? What on earth is this?" He started to laugh uproariously. But what came to mind at that moment was the behavior of my mother-in-law and Isabella. No way, I thought. Anyway, I'll call them. They'll surely be concerned about this too. Lucas seemed to think it was all a prank, and while laughing, he tried to call my father-in-law, but there was no answer. Oh, they might be in the shower. Let me try calling Mom. Lucas then called his mother. It seemed she answered, and he told her about the leaf. From her surprised reaction, it was clear she was explaining something to Lucas. "Oh, so that's what it was, huh? All right, I'll let Sophia know." "Why do you want to talk to Sophia? Me? Hold on a sec. Lucas pulled the phone away from his ear and said, Mom sounds super apologetic. She says she wants to apologize to you, Sophia. Is that okay? Sure, I replied. While his words were surprising, I reluctantly took the phone from Lucas and picked up the call. Hello. Just like that, mother-in-law went completely silent. Then I heard a faint, familiar laugh in the background that sounded like Isabella. Hello, mother-in-law. Like I would ever apologize to the likes of you, you poverty-stricken wife. Use me, your children are as poor as a leaf. See ya, paper wife. With those unbelievable words thrown at me, she hung up. At that moment, I realized all the events of yesterday were an act of spite. What's wrong, Sophia? You seem off. But how could I ever convince Lucas of what just transpired? First, I needed to find out what mother-in-law told Lucas. Hey, what did mother-in-law say to you? Well, it seems like Dad accidentally gave out the gifts that Ava had prepared. Remember how Isabella and her family came over for Christmas? First, Dad had prepared some monetary gifts. Then Ava said she wanted to help too. Somehow, in the process, she decided to include a leaf from the garden as a bonus. She might have swapped it with the money. I see. What's up, Sophia? You seem off. I found myself at a loss for words, suddenly labeled as a poverty-stricken wife. I had never experienced something like this before and struggled to find the right words to explain what had happened. Just as I was about to speak, a call came in from father-in-law. Oh, sorry, Dad. Maybe he's calling back, Lucas said, putting the phone on the table and switching it to speaker. The phone rustled, and Lucas asked, Dad, did you call by mistake? Lucas? Oh, it says Lucas on the phone. Ava, is that you? Yeah, you got it. It turned out Ava was the one who called back using father-in-law's phone. You're going to get in trouble with Grandpa, Ava. That's fine. I wanted to talk. Grandpa's in the shower. It's all good. Plus, Grandpa always says we should answer the phone when it rings, so I'm talking for him. Lucas commented, Well, it's nice that Ava is happy to talk on the phone. This isn't the right time, perhaps sensing my mood. Sorry, Ava. We're in the middle of an important conversation. Oh, really? Well, that's a bummer. Bye, Lucas, and bye, poor auntie. Wait, Ava, What's up? What did you say at the end? Both Lucas and I didn't miss what Ava had said at the end. It sounded like she said, poor wife, because Mommy's grandma also called Auntie poor wife. She just said it earlier, too. Right now, Mom and Grandma are chatting over coffee. Ava, could you explain to Lucas what you mean by earlier? When Grandma was on the phone? Yes, so here's the thing. Broke wife once mentioned this to me. It's all about the leaf. Mom used to prepare the leaf with a smile and taught me all about it. She said that for the less fortunate, monetary gifts come down to a single leaf. Lucas looked at me with a baffled expression, and all I could do was stay silent. That's when my sister-in-law, who had noticed Ava's phone call, shouted, Ava. However, at that same moment, my father-in-law said, We'll talk about it later. Feeling confused about what was happening, I saw the phone being handed over from Ava to my father-in-law. Sorry about that. I was taking a shower. Then when I got dressed and came out, I found Ava saying something outrageous. So you heard it too, Dad? I'm sorry, Lucas. Could you hand the phone to Sophia? No worries, Dad. We're on speaker. Sophia's listening too. All right, Sophia, was what Ava just said true? And those bizarre words were targeted at you, right? Yes, that's right. My father-in-law stammered over his words. Behind him, I could hear my mother-in-law and sister-in-law speaking rapidly and agitatedly, as if trying to make excuses. My father-in-law sighed deeply. I am truly sorry. Please don't blame Ava. She didn't mean any harm. No, it's all right. We don't mind at all. Ava's not at fault here. Thank you. I'll follow up on this matter. Isabella's here too. We'll confirm things with her. With that, he ended the call. Lucas then looked at me, apologizing. I'm really sorry. I have no idea what's going on, he said, utterly confused. I shared with him all the discomfort I felt during my visits to Lucas's house. We decided to wait for a response from my father-in-law. Surprisingly, we received a reply sooner than expected, and amazingly, the very next day, Isabella's husband drove father-in-law, mother-in-law, and Isabella to our house. Upon entering, they stood before a sullen mother-in-law and sister-in-law, and father-in-law, along with Isabella's husband, apologized profusely. We've done something truly disrespectful. We are sorry. We apologize for the outrageous behavior of my wife. The deep apology was appreciated, but the two of them didn't utter a single word. After being married for 4 years, I couldn't fathom the reason behind their animosity, even though we rarely met. May I ask, why did you suddenly act this way towards me? If I understood the reason, I could address it. There might be some misunderstanding, I thought, but there was no response to my question. The two of them were intent on ignoring me. Father-in-law, enraged by their attitude, shouted, "Answer her." Finally, Isabella grudgingly responded, but her answer was unexpected. Well, Mom was originally against the marriage. Wait, that's it? And why? Why did you let him marry a woman like this? A woman who doesn't even wear a single brand name item, who dresses in mass-produced cheap clothes. Indeed, I'm not interested in branded items. On the other hand, Isabella is the type who likes branded goods, and my mother-in-law also owns and wears a few brand-named items. Are you saying? Don't tell me that's the only reason you insulted her? That's all it is. I just don't want her in our family. I wish they would divorce soon, and she would just disappear. You know, how could you say something so rude? And what about you? Why are you supporting such a woman? You're a top-tier company employee and elite. You should choose someone suitable for our family, right? Despite Lucas being a well-qualified medical professional, we can't accept such a woman as a family member, can we? Upon hearing Isabella's true feelings, her husband was speechless. However, it would soon be proven by the next words of my mother-in-law that this attitude was inherited from her. Originally, you see, I had found the suitable partner for Lucas. Despite that, he brought home some unknown woman and declared they were getting married. It was a true shock. What, you were doing such a thing without telling us? There are limits to what's acceptable to do to Sophia. It's fine, isn't it? She's just a poor girl, isn't she? Her parents didn't seem very impressive either, quite impoverished, don't you think? She wasn't wearing a single branded item. In other words, she's from a struggling household that finds it hard to make ends meet, right? What? What are you saying? Besides, to love a child born of such a woman, impossible. It would taint our precious Ava. We had plans for her to marry a friend's child. Upon hearing his mother's true feelings, Lucas was speechless. Feeling the same way, wondering how I could have missed all this, considering that my father-in-law called not out of interest but disinterest, everything makes sense as harassment. Well, it's fine if you divorced. Please do it as soon as possible. Let's go. We don't need to get involved in this farce, I said, ready to clear up a misunderstanding for the sake of my pride. Just as my father-in-law was about to say something, I was ready to defend myself. The ones who dramatically opened the living room door were my parents. It's been a while, father-in-law, mother-in-law. Did Sophia call you? My parents, aware of the situation, had arrived just in time. When they heard that my father-in-law was coming over, I had contacted them. It seemed they had heard some of mother-in-law's terrible comments from outside the door. Their timing was perfect. My parents approached mother-in-law with serious faces. What is it? Then my parents took out business cards from their breast pockets and said, "Here you go." Amazingly, they dropped their business cards at mother-in-law's feet, their attitude seeming to say, "Pick it up." I had to try hard to suppress my laughter. The one who rose to their bait was Isabella, picking up the business card and shouting, "Stuck arrogance from a poor person. You didn't even wear any branded items today, and your clothes look mass-produced." As soon as she looked at the card, she realized her mistake. Mom startled. Mother-in-law also looked at the business card Isabella held. You two are executives of Valak Klo. Yes, my husband. And I started out together. He's an executive at the headquarters. I'm the head of planning. Our daughter quit when she got married. You know that, right? Both of my parents are currently working at the headquarters of Valak Klo, a famous low-cost apparel brand. I also, after graduating from college, while I had spoken to my father-in-law and mother-in-law about myself at the time of our marriage, my parents had never explained their situation. So she could go back to work anytime she wanted, right? What? That's amazing. You work at that famous fashion brand's major corporation. So what do you mean we're poor? That my grandchild is the grandchild of a poor wife because you opposed the marriage? It's okay to harass us. It's not. We're really sorry. But that apology was only because my parents held executive jobs. Needless to say, it was beyond the point of being resolved by just an apology. Henry looked disappointed as he said, I thought it was a good thing to leave Ava with my parents, but you? I stuttered. I'll drive you home, but after that, we'll live separately. What? What are you talking about? I'm glad I got to see your true face. Let's discuss our divorce when we get home. Henry then left the house. At that moment, my father-in-law also stood up, bowed deeply to my parents, saying, I'm really sorry for what happened. He then turned to us. I'm really sorry. I'll be in touch. Looking sternly at my pale-faced mother-in-law, he said, Be prepared when you get home. Before he too exited our house, my mother-in-law and Isabella hurriedly grabbed their belongings and rushed out. I caught my breath at home. After my parents kindly offered to pick up Alexander from the child care center later, I received a call from my father-in-law. He told me that my mother-in-law had been forcibly sent back to her parents' house. It's a de facto separation. Apparently, they made this decision because they were unsure what she might do to Alexander. But it's a separation with a premise of divorce, and it seems they are waiting for the right timing. As for Isabella, the divorce was finalized immediately after she returned home. Henry obtained custody of Ava. Isabella, of course, has taken refuge in my mother-in-law's house. But she seems to be getting a good scolding from my mother-in-law's mother, who knows the truth and is currently on a job hunt. We continue to live our busy daily lives. It feels really good to not only see our child grow up as parents but also to share this joy with his grandparents.